Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you guys had a lovely lunch, even though the sandwiches did run out a little bit. It's my pleasure to introduce Gerber Vaddeley from Fox IT, talking about, I actually forgot the topic, code in, there we go, code for all, security for all. Sorry, I completely put a blank there. That happens if you eat lunch way too much. Gerben, please have a fun time. Looking forward to your presentation. Good luck.
Okay, thanks. And thanks, everybody, for showing up. Talking to an empty room is less fun. So, somebody once told me that whenever you're talking, you have something to sell. And I was thinking, what am I trying to sell here? What's the story? And I'm not selling you a product or anything. I'm selling you an idea of the future that I believe can be attractive. Sometimes there's a few different topics mixed, and it'll all be combined at the end, and see how it comes together. So, this is me. Gerben studied in Delft, applied physics. There I got all the mathematical background that I need to understand AI, the image processing, and all the other stuff. I love water sports, sailboats, wakeboarding, no matter. And also interesting, I have a side career in motorsports, so I don't only do IT security, but also motorsports. And in motorsports, I work as a race engineer. So I work with data, I work with drivers, how do we get the most performance, and I work with strategy. What's the things we need to do to win the race? And that's also what I do at Fox. I'm working on strategy. I'm looking forward. Less, hey, what stuff do we need to do? We know what's going to change in the future that's important to us. What do we need to pay attention to in the future? So, in defining what our topic is, sometimes it's helpful to say what it's not. And we will not be talking about how to get stupid stuff out of ChatGPT. There's enough people talking about that. And whenever you're in a conversation with somebody, this flowchart is helpful. If they didn't ask for reasoning and didn't ask for a check, they need to redo it. And it's also not a talk about a silver bullet. There is no silver bullet. This whole thing, AI, the world, etc., is one big, complex, adaptive system. And if anybody comes with a simple solution, it's likely wrong. So, what is our topic? And sometimes people ask me, should we be afraid of what's coming? Is there anybody in here that believes, hey, this AI development, it could be a bit scary. I'm not sure what's going on. Okay, yes, me. And the road to Terminator, let's see, how would that work? What's on our path? And I will be zooming in on software. I'll be zooming in on security, IT security, and I'll be zooming in on AI, and I'll be mixing them during the talk. So I'll switch from one subject to the other, and then in the end, it will come together. And by the way, if you have any questions, just raise them, because I prefer conversation to a monologue. So let's begin at the beginning. What is software? I'm assuming all of you know what software is. Software is just a set of instructions that we feed a computer such that the computer will perform an action. Nothing more, nothing less. So no software, no action. Some say the software is what makes the computer do things. Some people say, well, it limits what the computer can do. Yeah, it's all the same. And software is usually written by specialists. I'm not sure if there's anyone in here that writes software on a regular basis for a living. Excellent. And I think you agree with me, it requires certain skills. It requires a level of intelligence, and it's, at least that's my experience. And okay. It's hard to make and it's easy to copy. And that will be a central theme that we will have in this talk. Oh yeah, and a drive for economic growth. I think that's super clear. We wouldn't be here economically without software. So it's a super big driver. And usually, I think always, there's somebody that's talking to the computer. He's writing the code. Yes? So he understands the language of the computer, and then there's the user, usually many, that want something out of it. But the users are not the ones that make the code. It's the computer programmers that make the code, and computer programmers are a special corner case because they make the code they use themselves. Okay, let's leave that aside. But generally speaking, there's users that want something, and there's somebody else that makes the code. And the chain in between can be really long and it can be really short. If it's an internal development team, it can be a one-on-one. But if it's a product that's sold commercially, it's usually with a product manager and a product owner and a team and a backlog and tickets and what be. It's all trying to translate what the user wants to what the computer needs. And what I'll explain is, as part of how I see the future, is that AI, large language models, can do both. They can both understand the user and write the code, which is super important. So large language models are super good at understanding what it is we want out of it. We can put just in human language, questions, whatever we want, and it will give something back. Most people associate it with text, but I mainly associate it with code, because large language models are pretty good at writing code. Eh? So, they can write, yes. And let's first establish that they can do something before we go into the question, are they good or not? And, first one, let's ask the LLM itself, do you believe you can write code? Okay, yes. It believes it can write code. And, okay, fair enough, if we ask it to write a function, in this case I asked it, hey, can you make me a function that will check if a number is a prime number or not? Which is not a super complicated task, but a somewhat complicated task, because you need to understand some mathematics, and you need to understand what are prime numbers, and you need to understand how do I calculate, and you need to understand how do I make it efficient in some way. Okay, so ChatGPT does it. Excellent. Now, how do we know if it's any good? Well, we ask ChatGPT to make a test. And then we start a new session. We don't feed it the code, no. We say, okay, give me a test that will test this code. And please gather lots of corner cases, and then we can run the test against the code. Interesting. So now I will switch topics. I will switch from AI to cybersecurity for a moment. Hold that thought about the code. So, why does cybersecurity as a business exist? We don't make any food. We're not transporting people. We're not making electricity, no water, no nothing. So why does IT security exist? Any suggestions? Police exist because there's people out there who want to do bad things. Yes, that's one aspect. That's the outside world. Indeed, in the outside world, not everybody can be trusted. Data-driven society, okay? Yes, that's an element. And we look at the software development paradigm, and we were talking about a paradigm shift. If we look at the software paradigm from last year, or maybe this year still, and it is that making software is hard, but distributing software is super easy. Either copying or as a service, doesn't matter. It's some form of distribution, and the distribution is super easy, but the making of the software is hard. And which means that if I make software and we both share the software and we pay half each, then we both get the same benefits at half the price. And if there's 4 of us, then we halve it again. And if there's 8 of us, then we halve it again, 16 halve it again, 32 halve it again. You get the picture. So the more people use the code, the cheaper it becomes to use. And since distribution is free, this is an interesting model. And if we look at, hey, but what are sources of IT security problems, then it could be the user, yes, big problem. Could be administrators, sometimes a problem. And sometimes it's the software. It can either be your own software you wrote, or somebody else's software further up the food chain that's affecting your system, and that could also be a problem. And we'll not be talking about the users, we'll be talking about the software today. Okay, so we've established we need to share software so we make it cheap. So we copy all the software. And also, hey, if we want to use it for all of us, then we need to have all the features for all of us. So we'll need to have more features than I need because we're sharing it, so it needs also your features. And then the software grows and grows. And the complexity grows and grows. And then we need security software. That's where the industry comes in. And then we add identity and access management software, vulnerability scanning, automated patching, and it grows and grows and grows. And what could possibly go wrong? The thing is that in this enormous growing code base, we've all been making mistakes. And we've established writing code is hard, at least I believe it is, and it still is. And if you want to do it securely, I mean, really proper code, it becomes super expensive. And at Fox, we have a department called the crypto department. I've worked there for years. And we know what it takes to write code that is secure. And whatever it is, it's not cheap. Eh? So indeed, we need to sell many. But the less hours we put in, the more profit we have. In other words, in the business model of the software industry, there is, if I produce the software and I put less time in and get away with it, you use the software and get to live with the consequences. Interesting. And so you have to do vulnerability management, patch management, blah, 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 blah. And we get away with it because it's faster time to value, it's agile, and whatnot. Okay. Now we go back to AI. And we say, hey, but AI can help programming, right? It can, as an assistant, it can help us, and at least if I'm coding, it's super nice, and I get the functions I need, I get the tests I need, etc. But this makes the problem bigger, no? But because if we increase productivity and assume the quality is the same, then we'll have larger volumes of code and more bugs. That is assuming that the business model will remain the same. So, let's step in a thing in the future, maybe not even so far away, where making software is actually easy, fast, cheap, and good. I didn't put the good in, but let's put it in there as well. How would all the business models change if suddenly software can be made fast and cheap? So, when you all came in, the beginning, there was this QR code. And who makes QR codes on a daily basis? Anybody? No? So how would you make a QR code? In the old paradigm, there's somebody thinking about, hey, we might need this in the future. So a software developer makes code and starts to make a program and says, hey, if I have this input, a string, then I can make a QR code, etc. I can put it in the App Store, somebody will download it, and we'll put advertisements in there, and we'll all be happy. Okay, so we can also ask ChatGPT and say, I have this complex URL, and I don't want to bother you with a complex URL. I want to give you something easy. So ChatGPT, can you make me a QR code from this ugly URL? And yeah, okay, it says here it is, download it right there, and it's correct. What happened? Does anybody know what happened here in the background?
Probably use the third white shirt. Because something.
Almost. What it did, and this is super interesting and a really big thing, in the background, it made me my own small program that produces a QR code. It started a virtual machine, it ran the code, it checked the output, yes, this looks valid, and then returned me the output and said, here's the result. This is a big thing, huh?
It's calculating in.
Yes. Yeah, this is the ChatGPT Plus with data analytics. Yes, yes. But you can also do it yourself. Just that. Yeah. I don't think we've seen anything like this before in the history of computing, where I just give a question. I'd say I want a QR code. There's no specification, no documents, no procedures, nothing. I want the QR code. And there's a large language model that understands, okay, I can't make the QR code, but I can make code that will make it. And I know how to do it, and I will execute it for you. And I will just give you the result. And ChatGPT is not even 1 year old. Okay, the models behind it are of course a bit older. So within 1 year's time, we went from a thing that was cute for writing poems to a thing that can write and execute code for you. Yes?
But the price is important that I saw. I was like on the website or a million.
We'll get back to that later. I love your question, and I will address it at the end, if that's okay with you. And if I forget it, then please remind me. And so there was no mic, but the question is, hey, why not use somebody else's code, some third-party service that's already fixed it? Yeah, good question. Now, okay, there we go. Who knows what Deep Blue is? Chess computer, yes. And why is it famous? Yes, it beat the world champion. So, and Deep Blue, okay, some say it's artificial intelligence. I say it's more a lot of compute. And AlphaGo, 2015. So, first one was with chess, which is considered somewhat of an easier game to play for a computer. And in Go, I'm not a Go expert myself, but apparently it's land grab on a board. And that is supposed to be much harder. And in 2015, they did the same thing, DeepMind, and they beat the best player in the world in Go. Okay, nice. Who knows about AlphaGo Zero and why it's different? AlphaGo Zero is different because AlphaGo was trained on humans. So they looked at games and they trained AlphaGo with the games human played. AlphaGo Zero is called Zero because it had to do zero with people. It only played games against itself, and it kept on improving, and became better than the one that was trained by humans. So the human training made it worse, which is interesting. So, how do we self-improve? That's the question. And of course, I made the function, I showed you, I made the test, and I passed them to the same ChatGPT with the code analytics, and I say, run the test. Excellent, it says, well, the test passed, the function works, and it passed all the tests, and this is what it did. Now, this was a simple example, just a simple function. How do we go from something simple to something complex? Because any bigger program requires us to deconstruct it, solve smaller problems, test all those things, and then assemble it again on a higher level. So how do we do it? And part of the solution, at least how I see it at the moment, is with agents. So, and I think I have time to actually show this. Wait. Here is a piece of code. And those that use it will recognize it. And what I'm basically saying is, hey, here I have an assistant, and I have a user proxy. So the user proxy does what the user is supposed to do. This is scary. And then, this I don't need. Let's see if this runs. So I asked the question. 2 stocks, Meta and Tesla. What did they gain this year? So what's happening in the background is that the assistant, the agent here, is writing a piece of code. It does its best attempt at solving this problem. And depending on internet speed, etc., oh, okay, error, doesn't work. Module not found, so it has a dependency that it doesn't have. And so it thinks, okay, maybe we can correct this. And it goes and throws another error. Okay, apparently it's not an easy thing to solve. And now it's trying again. And in the meantime, it has been fixing all the problems it was facing. So it had dependencies it did not have, and the code was not correct, so it corrected the code, and in the end, it started to work towards a solution. Okay, and there's the answer. I'm not sure if the answer is correct or not, but hey, it's at least an indication of the process. So what's interesting here is that it takes this problem statement and starts working and starts self-correct the problems it's facing. This is really interesting because this, if we take the example of the AlphaGo, what was critical for AlphaGo 0 to become super good? It was self-improvement. If it can run itself and it can self-improve and run all the time and improve and improve and improve, then it can become really good. And I will just close this for the moment. Okay. So this was one agent. So an assistant, and that could run on my computer and start write the code. Aha. Next level up is what I believe at the present is the best we can do in terms of code generation, is so-called multi-agent. And what is this multi-agent system? It is you take one agent and say, okay, you're the boss, you get to decide. You have one agent and you tell, you're the architect. You make all the decisions and you keep a log of all the decisions you made for later. Then we have the software developer that will implement all the software. There's the tester that will test all the software. There's the quality assurance expert. And the user, you can have the user in the loop or out the loop, whatever you want. And you can have all these agents and that are all trained to a specific task. And with AI, they tend to be better if they are focused on a single task. You can give them the documentation, anything you want, and you can say, okay, but this is the task, and these are the bounds within you operate. And you can have a group conversation with all these agents working together and solving a problem. Yes, Yes. Yeah. Good one. Good one. Yes. Thank you. In the also there's the functional reviewer and the security reviewer. And if you want, you can also automate the pen testing, etc., because the agents, they can also perform functions, tasks, activities, etc. You can have them pull data from the web, do things. And I hope you are seeing where this is going. So, back to Terminator. What do we check off? It can write code. Okay, excellent. We've established that. It can self-test. We've established that. It can self-improve. We've established that. It can execute. And in this group setting, it can go out on a mission in code. There are some caveats here. It's not so super easy because you need some metric to determine did this improve or not. And in Alpha or chess, of AlphaGo, for chess, it's easier because you know the rules, you know the outcomes, and for software, it's not always super easy to determine which one was better and which one was not. So we have some work to do there. And why I believe, sorry, take a sip of water. Why I believe this is interesting is because it gives us a path out of the ever-growing pile of software we are reusing collectively. So the big problem I see with software industry at the moment is that, like we discussed before, the code base is growing and growing and growing, and we can't manage complexity. This gives us a possibility for certain aspects, not for everything. I wouldn't use this for my banking, for example, but for certain tasks, we can start to go away from general purpose software and move to single purpose software, made just in time. Especially for you, no bells and whistles, does only the thing you need. Self-improvement. Super important. Now we can make code that in the background, without human intervention, is continuously improving, which is super interesting. So what risks do I see? Well, the top one I think is pretty obvious. And that is, if we keep the business model and see AI only as a way to increase profit in the moment, then we'll only increase the problem. The other thing is, some people might be in a hurry and say, hey, we need to capitalize on this because there's a business incentive. The one that gets it right the first time has the biggest profit, right? Because you can sell at the old price and build against the new price. And we've seen this pattern before, and that was in the cables between Europe and America. There was somebody made an internet cable in the ocean, was super expensive to make, and then they could sell the bandwidth to companies at a high price because they were the only one offering it. It was super expensive. And then they thought, we'll make another one and we'll make more money. And so they added another cable and indeed, more money. And they added another cable. But the new cable had more bandwidth. So they thought we can sell at the old price and put in the new cable. But suddenly they had more capacity and the old cables had a lower capacity, so they weren't able to sell those anymore. So they had all these investments and less money coming in. And there was a competitor also making a cable. And ultimately the price went down because they believed if we make all these cables, we can sell the bandwidth at the price we used to charge. But of course, the supply goes up and demand stays the same, price goes down. It's simple. So there will be an incentive to do this fast, and there will be people who say, hey, there's a good way to make money. And also super important, but it's mainly also for management, development is going really fast. Do you have a clear visual on what's possible and what's not, what's happening and what's not? Not easy.
There's a third or fourth risk. That's energy consumption.
Yes.
Because Microsoft just switched off access to one of the GPTs because they don't have enough.
Yes. Yes, correct. That is a problem. And I'm not, yeah, I'd say it's above my pay grade to have an opinion about that. But in general, things tend to get more efficient over time. Also, if we look at GPT-4 and the newly released GPT-4 Turbo from OpenAI, it's a lot more efficient and a lot faster, the new model. But the demand grows in the same rate. And in all honesty, what the amount of electricity we are using collectively with all the cloud compute is pretty bad to start with, even with all the normal things we do. So, now let's make the link to risk. I guess you're all here because you're in some way interested in risk management. And yeah, take the blue pill or the red pill. Huh? And the thing I see here is that maybe the discussion we should be having, I'm no risk manager myself, so I don't know, but to me it sounds like the discussion we should be having is what are we doing with the profits? So we're getting faster. And I think that's safe to establish that we can do more work, not only coding, but on other areas as well. So what are we doing with the benefit we get? Are we taking the profit? Or are we saying, maybe we should invest in security. We should invest in quality for the long term, because this is a super relevant question for the business. And this is where I think risk management should be making a statement, or at least having a stake in how we're moving forward. Because if you take all the profit and you not invest in quality, that's a problem for the long term. If you do nothing and keep the cost and the productivity, cost high, productivity low, that's not a route that's sustainable to the future. So there's somewhere there must be some optimal solution, and I think that should be the discussion we should be talking about. And wrapping up, crystal ball. I hope, and that's the part of the vision I see for the future, I hope that we can use this AI to make two things. One, reduce the amount of software we use collectively. Reduce the trusted computing base and make it super good. Whatever code we share, that we make it as good as possible. And for the rest, the less critical code, I would be super enthusiastic if we could move more to the custom software model, where everybody gets what he needs and nothing more and nothing less. Because in the end, if we can get that up to spec, that might be a route to a much better ecosystem in terms of security, because we're not reusing all each other's bugs. So, again, the QR code. This is a white paper we made as a company about AI security, so cybersecurity in AI. If you're interested, you can download it. You don't need to provide your social security number, you don't need to provide your PIN code, and you don't need to provide your email address. It's just there, you can download it or not, whatever you prefer.
We still have
And
about 5 minutes left. Does anyone have any questions? You can just raise your hand. If you're at the back, I'll give you a mic. At the front, just go for it.
There's one question here.
Is your opinion about ChatGPT needs to be continuously feed by scraping? Because OpenAI ChatGPT was born and based on the idea to scraping an entire web, primarily for coding Stack Overflow, Reddit, and no others platform. Now they close, let's say they lock up all these activities, and then the scraping has been completely shut down.
Yeah.
What do you see ChatGPT from your perspective if it's not fitted anymore with the updated information? Get a little bit old, get starving, it cannot get information up to that level to be up to date with what the business need. That's my question.
Yes. So the question is, I repeat it, ChatGPT, or actually the codex in ChatGPT, that's the coding model that needs information. And we got it started by scraping information of the web, and that's somehow frowned upon. And what do we do going forward? I think the universal solution that the companies are adopting at the moment is the freemium model. So, for example, GitHub Copilot will have an enterprise version and a consumer version. And with the consumer version, you are feeding the model. And so it's actually the users that are starting to feed the model, and which I think makes sense because hey, you're using the tool and you're all contributing. So it's but not taking somebody else's stuff that put it on the web with the idea for somebody else to use and not for a company to use. So I think that in the long run is a sustainable model. The people who want to pay less, well, they just contribute to the information that's in the system.
Questions?
Hi. I have a question about the slide you used. You used a slide with a whole team and different functions.
Yes.
If I'm a user, I get out of ChatGPT what I write what I want.
Yes.
Can I not say for a function I want extremely experienced security function
Yes.
instead of the normal security function, and do I get out then a better tested code?
Yes. So the question is, if I ask ChatGPT to not be a security expert but an experienced security expert, yes, you get better quality output. It sounds silly, but yes, it is true. There's of course a limit there, and I don't think that in the security community we have already figured out how to best optimize this, because there's people working on all kinds of things. Should we automate pen testing? Should we do more with code reviewing? There's people working on lots of stuff, and the real answer is yes, nobody had time to do it. So it's just not done yet. And that's because the amount of stuff we could do collectively is so much bigger than the amount of stuff we can do, that at the moment the solution space is just not exhausted. There's only nice ideas.
Okay.
Questions still?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the question about why ChatGPT wrote its own function instead of using
Yep, and the
validated, guaranteed, specialized, etc. Because that's a question that I have. What guarantees do you have with single-use software? It sounds really good, but out of a audit zeg je dat, view, what validation do you have?
Yes.
Because there's single use and single security.
Yeah. And so the question is, how can I validate the outcome, and how can I be sure that whatever it produces is good enough and meets the standard? And that's a super good question, and I think at present we need to make a separation between, this is stuff that is functional, not critical, and stuff that is critical. And I think that if we label something critical, we should be more careful than labeling something not critical. So for example, the QR code, hey, it makes it, I check it works, it's okay for me. That's all I needed. But if we, for example, go to the banking and I pay in the supermarket, yes, I'd rather have that complete system is well tested. And that's also why I don't think that there's a silver bullet. But I do think that there's a lot of fluff we have in the code bases around that we actually don't need if we would be scrutinizing a bit more. And all the stuff that we don't really need, why just not get rid of it and replace with stuff that we just make on demand, so that we can reduce the total volume of code and start focusing the effort on making the code that is critical really good. And I think that's my main message summarized.
We do have time for one more question at the front.
It's a bit of an ethical question, actually, because you said that one of the biggest problems we have at the moment. Oh, sorry. It's a bit of an ethical question because you said one of the problems we had at the moment is that the model is in such a way that people start delivering a lot of software with a lot of bugs.
Yes.
Yeah. So they're not focusing on quality. They're not focusing on security. They're focusing on more.
Yes.
And on functionality.
Yes.
But yet you say, this is actually your opinion I'm asking, because you say I'm hoping that with the AI developments, then when there's a lot of software, people will not use it to make a lot of money, but to invest in better software.
Yes.
So is that not the same thing that's going wrong at the moment?
It's out of self-interest. So it's not for out of charity, but because I believe that software companies, and if you make your own software, I consider yourself a software company, need to have increasing quality over time to sustain the business. That's basically because also risk is increasing. So if you keep the quality standard the same and just take the profit, you will be facing a long-term risk that might be existential. The other risk is if you do not improve performance and you do not adopt anything and then you keep the cost high and the quality as it is, then that's also a dilemma, because that's also bad for your future. So somewhere in the middle, I think for every business that's up to their own to decide. I mean, I think a startup maybe has more risk appetite than, say, a pension fund that has a lot to manage. So it's not, I can't make a generic statement, but I do think it would be in the best interest of companies to automate more with in code development, and rather than cutting costs, just start with increasing quality at the same time, because that will, I think, in the end, bring the best results.
I'm on board. I mean, that's it. But
the interesting thing about that one is there's in the car sales, somebody got a Nobel Prize for it, George Akerlof. The lemon market might be a nice, interesting article for you to read.
Okay, I'll ask ChatGPT in a moment.
I do see there's more questions, but unfortunately we do have to call it a day and start moving around. So Gerben, thank you very much. Please feel free to bug him afterwards and ask him.